Welcome to The Problem, a Lockwood & Co. podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And today we are talking about the first part of part 4 of The Creeping Shadow, which is called The Cursed Village.
Yeah.
And I know we spent, the first couple episodes of this book with me complaining about how hot it is. But now we've entered that time of year where it's not cold enough during the day to put the heat on, and we're, being stubborn about it. But it's cold enough at night that right now my fingers are icicles, and I'm gripping my cup of tea for dear life.
I can't have it be cold at night. I really can't survive it. If I can be under blankets and stuff like that. That's good. I don't like to have my nose be cold and things like that. It needs to be a certain level of cozy, or I'm really grumpy when I get up.
Oh, interesting. I enjoy it being cold so that I can have 5 blankets on top of me. Although I do, my medication side effects have kind of ruined every life for me, because no matter what, most nights I end up waking up in the middle of the night sweating.
Oh.
But usually by the time I wake up, the part where I'm on fire has passed, and now I just am soaking wet and freezing cold, and I have to get up and change. And I'm like, this stinks.
Yeah, this is what my wife is going through without medication, or just I just wake up because all the blankets flop on top of me, and she's getting up and she's angry at her own body. And
I'm excited to have both things, in 10-ish, 15 years. I don't know.
Maybe it'll cancel out.
It'll cancel out and I'll just be cold all the time. That's the ideal for me, honestly. I would choose that. All right, chapter 18, in which Penelope Fitz invites Lockwood & Co. into her agency, and later Lockwood accepts Danny Skinner's case. The chapter at this time is a portrait, which I did think was probably Marissa, but I had completely forgotten that the contents of this chapter happened. In my memory before reading for today, in The Creeping Shadow, they went to the underground to try to save Skull. They failed, and then the next morning we're like, maybe we should get out of town.
Right, yeah.
And I completely forgot that all the stuff between those two thoughts happened. So I looked at this chapter, and I was like, I have no idea how this comes up.
It's a picture in Danny Skinner's house. No. Yeah, I was surprised when I reread this chapter how much ground it covers.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, wow, a lot happens in this one chapter. I really love this painting. The concept of the painting is so cool, where she's holding a lantern down by her waist, so the glow is coming up onto her face in a really creepy, powerful way. Mm-hmm. And she's younger and still powerful. It's a different version of Marissa Fitz than is usually described in her portraits.
Yes, I also love this implication that 50 years ago in this world, they didn't have flashlights.
Yeah. Just an old-timey lantern. Yeah.
Or as the English would say, a torch, but I wasn't sure if that would get my point across.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we start with this little recap of Lucy saying that Lockwood was quite satisfied with the result of their subterranean expedition, because even though they failed to retrieve the skull, they found that the Kipps are really powerful psychical objects.
Mm-hmm. Yep. She's not feeling that way.
No, because the Kipps aren't her friend.
Mm-hmm. She's I don't know why, but I feel empty inside. Yeah. That's weird.
But they do eventually manage to get out of the underground. I suppose the way that it's described, they get back to an active area and can get out of a normal station.
They almost get hit by a train or something. She said. She's it doesn't matter how it happened. Trains were involved. We got out. It's fine.
Yeah. And then they get back to Lockwood & Co. and they're chatting with George and Holly.
So they talk about the capes a little bit. George is like very interested in how the capes work and why. And Lockwood's like, we can't wear them all the time. They're kind of too ostentatious. Like people, it could be like the Lockwood and Co. Uniform.
Yeah.
It would be funny. I wonder if they have more than two up in the room. George is like, we need to go through that room, and Lockwood's like, I can't handle George. I've done enough. I've done enough for this house, for this company. No more.
Yeah. And George is just like, fine.
There was like in one of the earlier books, it talked about, wasn't it like, I think it was just in the previous book where Lucy like threw away her sword so that she could, and stepped out of the iron circle so that she could like commune with the ghost in Mrs. Wintergarden's house, because that stuff was like suppressing her powers. So I wonder if the capes would like mess up their abilities at all.
Well, the story that they tell, that that Lockwood's parents heard about the capes, was that they were specifically for communing with ghosts.
Yeah, but are they like for crossing over? Because then it wouldn't matter. Or you know what I mean? Or do they like, it like kept them safe through the train, but it didn't seem to mess up their ability to see the ghosts or perceive them or hear things.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That the capes were specifically for communing.
That's so pretty amazing then. You know, like,
yes.
Yeah. That makes them like really ideal for what they do.
Yeah, I don't see going forward why Lucy, at least, wouldn't just always have one on when they're on a job.
Mm-hmm.
Because then she can get as close to a ghost as she wants to make connection with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You wouldn't even need the swords, really. You just like...
Or like Lockwood and George could have their rapiers, but Lucy just the cape. That's what I would do. Anyways, so they're talking about how Lucy recognized that dude who was collecting up all the powerful objects as being from the Rotwell Institute. His name is somewhere here. Johnson,
yeah.
And Lockwood has this great bit where he's like, that is just the kind of, good work, whatever, that we needed. If you were still with the company, I'd give you a raise.
She's like, well, you're not. And George is like, so you'll give me a raise? And he's like, no.
And he's like, no, but I will go so far as to say it's the most significant bit of work anyone's done since the Chelsea outbreak. You're an amazing agent, Lucy. And my note here is like, he is almost begging.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, I will give you a raise. I will lavish praise upon you. Anything, Lucy. Anything. Just come back.
Just please come back. Come back to me. Yeah. Even George is like pretty excited about these capes and stuff, but he's still like, I don't know. He's still using that money thing as a dagger against everything. He's still hurt and he's still lashing out a little bit. He's like, so you'll give me a raise, Lockwood? You know, I contribute too around here. And he's like, yeah, George, I'm busy right now. I'm doing something really important.
I have to imagine that the two of them have conversations about this, like outside of Lucy's hearing, obviously. And I don't think George is, I think he's more teasing than actually upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he was pretty mad earlier in the book. I think
but like at Lucy, yes.
Yeah, I think that he is less hurt now. The longer it goes on, the more that Lucy's around. But I think he still has that weapon in his back pocket a little bit.
I don't remember if the two of them, Lucy and George, have like another conversation, just the two of them, in this book about, clearing the air and stuff.
I don't think so. Yeah, eventually they'll get separated and then, yeah.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, I guess it all sort of was supposed to be resolved when he very quickly said, of course Lucy can stay. That was kind of the pinnacle of that. But still, it would have been nice for them to have another heart-to-heart.
I think he has a catharsis at the end of the book where he kind of gets it all out of his system.
That's true.
Because he has the same experience as Lockwood, like where he loses her. So, and then he's like, oh, okay, I'm okay now.
But also, they kind of have like an agent's version of a rage room, you know, where there's just a shit ton of ghosts, and they're like, let's mess them all up.
Yep.
We've got all this equipment. Let's go.
Yeah, but they talk about Johnson, and they bring Holly into the conversation, which is a really good way to fold her in.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's planned. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just one of those things where he's like, oh, obviously.
Well, I think the plan was for Rotwell to be bad. And so therefore, in the last book, they put an agent of Rotwell in Lockwood and Co. in case, like we talked about previously, how maybe she was going to be a spy.
Mm-hmm.
So it just sort of is logical that she's there.
Yeah, it worked out. And she knows about Johnson, doesn't know Johnson. But what I like about Johnson being at the black market is, like, before at the other black market, we found out about like rich people were buying the sources.
Right, yes.
But it wasn't like, you know, they were like the market for the black market, if you will. Like, they're the customers. But in this case, you find out that, like, they're the root cause of the entire illicit, you know, market happening. Like, they're not, the law says that they need to destroy sources, and the people who are undermining that law are the people who aren't supposed to enforce it. So this is like a different level of corruption.
Yes. It is interesting how they do this here with this Johnson guy, because I say they, Stroud, because the way that he separates the institutes, like the research institutes, from Rotwell, the agency, does make it unclear whether or not Rotwell himself is involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, maybe he's not that bad of a guy, you know, like it could just be happening behind his back. And I think that's,
like maybe Johnson is the problem.
Yeah, maybe Johnson's the problem. And I think that that's an interesting way to have done that.
Yeah, and we do find out from Holly that, like, everyone at the Institute is adults. There's no, like, agents or operatives. It's a purely, like, scientific thing that, you know, they supposedly developed these gadgets or whatever, but there's nobody there who has psychic powers, which I think immediately makes it, like, suspicious. Because it's just like part of the adult world. And so you're like, oh, that's.
And also, how are they
bad.
Testing the psychic objects if there's nobody there?
That's weird.
Or the devices, the thingies.
How do they even know there are ghosts to experiment on? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange. Although I do think some of that is Stroud's wishy-washy rules on adults.
Uh-huh.
I just want to point out that we have this one moment where, like, Lockwood stands up and leans in a certain way that is very Lockwoody, and Lucy is immediately taken in by it, and it's just like, oh. And immediately George is like, can I just stand here and sit, or can I just stay here sitting, or do I have to lean and be all leadery and cool? It's just love the juxtaposition there. Because
what he's talking about is, like, in that room where Johnson was is all of these powerful sources, and the Ealing cannibal source was there, and George is like, which raises the question of why. And you could feel that, like, George is gearing up to give an explanation, and Lockwood is like, do you want to say something, George? And he's like, not if I have to get up and lean against the table in a cool leaderish way.
So good though.
It's good.
It comes right after Lucy, like, having a paragraph of admiring how Lockwood looks.
He's and like, my legs are too short, my buttocks would slide off.
Yeah. But it's just really good. Like, so much of the relationships in this book are never said out loud, but the way that they are written makes it so very, very clear.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
the joke is in the characters. Like that's
Yeah.
you just wouldn't get it if you don't know these characters so well.
Yeah, it's great.
It is also like what I kept saying so much in the beginning of the book. I think it is kind of a style choice to be like, we're not saying the things out loud anymore. Like the books have become a little bit more sophisticated. They're asking a little bit more of the reader because Lucy doesn't need to spell these things out, and they feel more satisfying and better.
Yeah. Anyways, so then George says, do you remember what we found in the tunnels beneath Acmere's? Aside from a massive pile of human bones. And Lockwood just says, I found Lucy. And it's just more of his trying to convince her, right? He's just like, yes, Lucy, you're my number one. You're all I'm thinking about.
The opposite of the last book, where he couldn't look at her. He couldn't stand to be with her in a car.
Exactly.
You're my everything. Yeah, so he's like, okay, Lockwood. But what I mean is...
Yeah, and George is just like, could we not? But not. He doesn't even need to say that. He's just like, well, actually, what we found was blah, 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 blah. And he goes on to talk about how what a source is and how bringing the multiple sources together, like we saw with Acmere's and with the bone glass, creates a larger hole between here and the other side, and for ghosts to come through, and how that is probably what's happening with them gathering up all these powerful sources.
Right. But he does so in like a hilarious, inappropriate simile where...
Oh, yes.
He's like, do you have like a pair of jeans or trousers and like the fabric gets thin and stringy and then there's a hole and you bend over and it's embarrassing and it rips open, and Lockwood's like, I have no experience with this. This is a disturbing metaphor and I don't like it. You need to stop. So
I also enjoyed Lockwood saying, I don't own jeans.
Yeah. Please, I am not a pleb. I don't...
Yeah. Amazing work all around.
It's good. It's really good character humor in this chapter. But yeah, I think he's spot on here. We understand what how the sources work, these cluster sources work from the previous books, and he's just like, those were just regular dead bodies. These are powerful type 2 sources that are being gathered, and so like it's going to make a bigger portal or something more easily, probably. Like that seems to be his theory.
Mm-hmm.
Then Holly talks about the cigarette that they found down there as a piece of evidence, and then Lucy is like, hey, Johnson was smoking when I found him in the back room.
Mm-hmm.
And George is like, was it the same brand of cigarettes? And she's like, dude, I don't know. And he's like, I can't believe you missed this opportunity.
You could have sniffed it. She was like, I'm sorry I didn't take time to sniff his cigarette.
I was avoiding being killed, George.
Yeah. I've enjoyed how quickly they've gone back to being siblings.
Yeah. But it does make the connection, like it doesn't establish it directly, but it does give us like an explicit bridge between like the person in the previous book was smoking. Johnson is a smoker. He's with Rotwell. Rotwell came and cleaned up that whole thing. And so it's like really like laying down for us that like this is all Rotwell being involved in creating that supercluster.
Or at least this dude who's high up in Rotwell and using their resources.
Right. As an institution. Yeah.
Yeah. And then almost immediately they switch gears and start talking about an invitation from Penelope Fitz that they received that morning for Lucy and Lockwood and Co. to go and meet her at the Orpheus Society.
Right. So we've heard about them, but we've never been there. Right.
Yeah. So this seems weird to me that she would invite them there. And honestly, to me, it feels like Stroud was just like, oh, I need them to know where it is for the next book.
Oh.
Because why would she not have them go to her office?
Mm-hmm. It does seem like another like power play to me where
That's true, actually, because she knows George is very interested in learning more about the Orpheus Society. So it is like, if you accept my offer, you'll have an in with them.
yeah, because he said that to her face on the float. He's like, I'm gonna join the Orpheus Society when I grow up. And she's like, oh, you know what that is? I didn't know that. So it is a thing of like, I'm in this privileged place, this exclusive club, and I'm inviting you to come here and meet with me. It's another like power thing.
That's fair. I guess I can retract my criticism.
Well, I think it is doing mechanically the thing that you're saying. Yeah, but it is kind of exciting if you've been reading these books like we have, you know, to be like, oh, the Orpheus Society, like, what is that? Because you really want to know more about that. And they're going to go right into it. So you're like, this is crazy. Like, they almost got killed. They have the new capes. Like, what's going to happen next? This book just kind of like goes all over the place, it feels like. And like I said, this chapter just covers a lot of ground. So
yeah. So Holly stays behind to make a list of where she thinks all the Rotwell Institutes are, the research ones. And then our main three folks, head on over to the Orpheus Society and are greeted by a dude who immediately recognizes Lockwood as being the son of Donald and Celia.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like this must be wild for Lockwood. To walk in and have his parents like thrown in his face that way.
Yeah.
Like completely out of the blue. But
and this doesn't seem like a part of like Penelope's plan to be like ambush him with his parents. So this is just like an academic type guy who's like, oh yeah, your parents, they were academics. And this, like, for us, the reader, is a rare like third-hand insight into his parents. Like, we would never get this information from Lockwood.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that he knew this. Like, he wouldn't have known that they had connections with the Orpheus Society and had done a talk there, or whatever it is.
Yeah, because that's what this guy tells him, that they were candidates for membership.
Yes.
And they gave a talk about ghost lore among the tribes of New Guinea and West Sumatra, which is where the capes are from, that they used in the previous chapter. So it's interesting to me that they were candidates when they were like people who were contributing like real knowledge. Like, we know that the capes are powerful and they work.
Yeah, I get the...
Well, the other people just like own factories, right? They're not like...
Right.
That's how they got in the club.
I get the feeling that he's saying they're candidates to not say, yeah, they didn't actually want to join. You know, they said no to our invitation.
Oh, I never considered that.
Like, I get the feeling that they were too interested, like, maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but they were more interested in, like, actually getting out there and doing field work and learning, and these people were like, we're just going to stay in our little house with our books.
Oh.
And also, the anti-capitalist of it all, like, they don't want to be owned by a bunch of factory people, you know, they want to go out and do their own thing.
Yeah, there's kind of two sides to like applied sciences, where there's like the people who really want to create patents and like start a business, and the other people who just want to like make stuff and be on the cutting edge of research and technology. And Celia and Donald feel like that second thing, and these guys all feel like the first thing.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
They did a talk for them because they'll still take their money.
Right. Interesting.
Because I do feel like that's a big thing in sciences also, the funding.
Yeah. Give a speech for money and then fund your next expedition.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way. I assumed that they were trying to get in with these people to get at their resources, but maybe not.
I mean, I think I'm basing that on absolutely nothing, you know? So it's just where my brain went with it.
It makes sense, though. And I don't think we ever get enough to know what's what.
No, we don't. Absolutely.
Do you think this guy is sinister at all? He doesn't feel like a bad person. He's like the secretary for the Orpheus Society. He's the secretary. Yeah, he says, I'm the secretary of the society. So
my thinking on this is that everyone in the Orpheus Society is actively keeping information from the public. So even if he's not, like, I'm sure he doesn't harbor any ill will towards these kids who have shown up, you know? But I do think he's part of the lowercase p problem.
Yeah, for sure. These guys are in, they want to develop technology, they say, to help protect the adult population who have no way of sensing ghosts. But it doesn't feel like they want to do that for the adult population at large.
No, they're a secretive society that nobody knows about.
Yeah, like, they want to do it for like an exclusive, like the 1% type of thing.
Yeah. Them and their backers will be protected.
Right. Yeah. While everyone else is eaten alive.
Yeah. We do get a discussion of who Orpheus was and why they're named after him and all that sort of thing. And it sort of ends with Lucy asking, you know, what about Orpheus? Did he bring his wife back from the world of the dead? And, you know, the secretary says, no, he didn't. He erred, and she remained on the other side. And so, I think that is maybe one of the first times they've referred to the other side as a place.
Yeah.
And not just like a metaphysical, what happens after you die type of thing. But also, I just think this was interesting because that's a Greek myth. And I keep bringing up how often it's kind of referenced that the ancient Greeks had their own capital P problem.
Right. And had technology related to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thought that maybe some of those myths that have stuck around were somehow related to the ghost problem.
And he talks too about that, like, he's telling George, like, we're a society for idealists. We hunt for real answers. There's a battle to be won, but not simply against ghosts, but against death itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really important distinction too, that like the problem is a stepping stone to some kind of greater control over death and therefore like life.
Yeah, the one thing billionaires can't control.
Right. Yeah.
That they're going to die someday and not have their power.
They won't have their stuff anymore. Yeah. So they want some way to monetize that whole thing and control it. So
yeah, I would say control more than monetize. But I mean, I guess they would control it and then 10 years later they would monetize it.
I mean, you could definitely be like, well, we'll make sure that you don't die if you give us, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would get me so hard. Be like, yes, I don't have time to read all my books. I will pay anything.
Yeah. So yeah, even though this guy doesn't feel very sinister or evil to me, but the things that he says are so casually exclusive and evil that it's like, the whole thing sucks. You're like, this place is terrible.
Yeah, he's very rich person evil, where they think that they're a good person doing good things, but they just don't even see what they could be doing, who they could be helping, how they're actively not helping. But then we go on to talk to Penelope.
Yep.
And yeah, we find the portrait from the chapter art, which is of Marissa. And basically, Penelope says, you guys did so good on that case that I want Lockwood & Co. to become part of the Fitz agency.
Yeah. It was I read that and I was like, we were talking so much about what is her motivations with the cannibal, and we had somebody write in about it. And I was like, oh, it was this. Why didn't I remember this? This is obviously her goal. Like, if they didn't die in the attempt or fail, then this was like the other move for her to absorb and control Lockwood & Co.
And she's so pleasantly condescending about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you can still operate out of your little home.
Yeah, you don't have to report to adults. It'll be your own special little unit of mine that
I will control.
I will have control over.
And maybe you'll stop doing all the things that are upsetting me.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Lockwood says no, because he wants Lockwood & Co. to be the best agency, not Fitz.
I love him for this, where he's like, I'm sorry, but I don't think we could happily become part of even such a tremendous organization as yours, which I don't think he's saying it in a sarcastic or condescending way.
No, not at all. I think he's being 100% sincere there.
Yeah.
I don't even necessarily think he sees anything nefarious happening here.
Me neither.
No. Yeah, he's just like, no, that wouldn't work for us.
Yeah, that's not who we are. And I don't know. I just love him when he does this. I'm like, yes, be you.
And I think it's one of the reasons that she is so gracious about it for now also, because she knows that he's not saying, no, we want to stay on our own so that we can continue to undermine you. He's genuinely saying, no, my vision is my agency.
Yeah, exactly. I think this also, up until this point, if you're just not a very sophisticated reader, like if you're just reading the book and taking it all at face value, this would be like the first really big clue that something is going on with Fitz. That, like, when he says that, I love the way that Stroud writes this, because he doesn't have to come out and say anything. It says, Miss Fitz smiled, remained, but she was as motionless as a stone. When she spoke, her voice was velvety. So like that is like, you could feel that him saying no was the wrong thing for her. Like,
yeah.
And she becomes like this more dangerous, predatory presence. And by the end of the conversation, she's actively like unhappy. And you can just feel that, like, oh, I thought Lockwood & Co. was becoming like greater and like recognized by the heroes in this world, but actually like Fitz might be bad. That never occurred to me before. You know what I mean? Like, he does that in a really elegant way, I think.
And it's interesting to put it here, just as we've sort of concluded that Rotwell is at the at the heart of everything going bad.
Because it's like, where do we turn? Because Fitz was greater than Rotwell. And oh no, what if Fitz is bad? What if Rotwell is bad? Like, who can we turn to? We can't turn to anybody.
And Deeprek is
controlled by
controlled,
these people.
But also like they've never had any respect for Barnes. I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but that he's just kind of a fool, a bumbling fool.
Yeah, he's too incompetent.
Incompetent, yes. Yeah. Deeprek is incompetent. Thank you. God, that was bothering me.
And Orpheus Society is also like, we're trying to conquer death, and like we're in it for the rich people and just building our prototypes. And so it really does, like, they just uncovered this big problem, and the Winkmans are like out for blood now because they showed their face in the underworld. And it's like, where do we turn? There's nowhere to turn. It starts to give you that feeling in the story. And it's just like really well done in a way where he's not like spelling it out for you. He's letting you come to the conclusion.
And it's also coming like after 3 books of them talking about how the adults are incompetent or don't care or don't believe them or are just not as good. And so it's kind of like the culmination of that comes down to this whole, okay, we can trust no one.
No one, yeah.
And as an aside from that, we learn that Kipps quit.
Yeah.
Which is great. No longer Fitz agent.
Yeah, and Lockwood is like scared for a minute. He's like, what do you mean? Like, is he dead? Oh yeah,
because she says it in such a way that he could be dead. Like, in a place where agents die all the time, like, why? That's just mean to say it that way.
Yeah.
But no, he quit.
I think that echoes a little bit Lockwood telling her no, where it doesn't feel like Kipps came back and was fired for that reason. From like, even what she says, that he had his own reasons. They didn't make sense to me. I don't really care. He wanted to go. I let him go.
Yeah.
And so like someone like Kipps told her no, Lockwood told her no. This is like not how things are supposed to happen.
It's also like I'm sure she's aware of how George discovered what was happening in Chelsea and then Kipps goes to work with them and then he quits Fitz. Like she has been controlling the situation for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she can see the signs of it quickly becoming out of her control.
Mm-hmm.
Or, information getting to the populace.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That she can see this whole thing spinning out of control a little bit. I think you see that in her reaction. Like I said, like how she becomes completely still and her voice changes and all of that stuff. But yeah, she makes it clear that like she's disappointed and doesn't like this, but and you can now leave since you told me no.
Yeah.
So she kicks him out right away.
Yeah, they leave, and I think either on their journey back or once they're back at Portland Row, they do like a quick recap of the Fitz family, of how like Marissa is Penelope's grandmother, and then she also had a mom who was only in charge for a short time and was allegedly like the nice one.
Mm-hmm.
But Marissa and Penelope have always been kind of like, not like people admire them, but they haven't been nice. They haven't been sweet,
Yeah, Holly talks about how, like, when they describe what went down to Holly, she's like, oh yeah, that sounds like that family, because at Rotwell, that was kind of their view of the Fitz.
Yeah.
That like they're entitled and whatever they say is how the world should like bend to their will. I like what Lucy says, like right before that, like right after they get kicked out in the narration. She says it was disconcerting. Nothing had actually changed, yet somehow the ground had insensibly shifted underfoot.
Yep.
And like, it's almost like you made a powerful enemy.
Yeah.
So like everything feels off and like the corners are closing in on them. It is a good reminder about, how the Fitz family has always been this way.
Yeah. And also just really good, like in the middle of book 4, setting up book 5.
Mm-hmm. And Lockwood kind of like tunes out. He does like a detective kind of like letting the pieces fall into place thing is how I perceive it.
Yeah, just sort of letting it simmer in his brain until all of a sudden it kind of boils over and he's like, oh, Danny Skinner? Danny? Is that his name? The Skinner kid.
That's right.
Let's do it. We're going. Because
the phone starts ringing and Lucy's like, I don't work here, so I'm not going to answer that. And George is like, you never answered the phone. So it's more this brother-sister stuff.
Yeah. But also, like, can you imagine George being your main phone answerer? Like, I suppose that changed when Holly was hired, but, like, I'm sure George was not...
He picks up and he's like, what?
Yeah, the most customer service savvy agent there's ever been.
But yeah, the phone's ringing and it's Danny Skinner. And George is like, should I hang up on this kid? What are we doing? Like, he's... What I really like about this whole thing, he says it's that bloody Skinner kid again. He's still talking about ghosts in that stupid village. It's worse than ever, apparently. To hear him, you'd think they are screaming spirits jumping out of the breakfast cereal. He's begging me to come back, or he's begging us to come back. But he's like being abusive and wheedling, Danny Skinner is. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like the direct contrast, just like before with Penelope Fitz, who like approached them with power and, said, come and work for me. And he's like, say, like, do your job, come work for me, please. And begging. I don't know. It's like the exact opposite. He's like on the phone with them instead of saying like, come to me. And then the exact opposite thing happens where Lockwood tells Penelope no, and he tells Danny yes. So
yeah, we've talked about this before, the difference between or that Lockwood and Co. tends to help the little people. And by doing that, find their way to the big problem.
Yep. It's always the most vulnerable people who pay in every situation. So
yeah,
it's a good way to like access what's really going on.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how the chapter ends. Lockwood says, yes, we're going to Alderbury.
Yep. Then in chapter 19, Lockwood and Co. arrive in Albury Castle and get rooms at the local inn.
Sort of.
2 rooms, in fact. And this is not how I think of the cross in the graveyard, which is the picture for the
No, this is small and like does
Yeah.
not have the like I can kind of see where the carving would
I mean,
be,
it could be on there. Yeah.
but it's tiny.
Yeah, it's far away. Yeah, I think of this thing as being way more massive. I also think of it being made out of wood. That's crazy, but because it wouldn't last in England, but that's how I think of it.
Did you happen to look up if this place actually exists?
I did look that up before when we mentioned it
Oh, okay.
originally, and it's not. It's made up.
Did not remember. Now I'm just looking at a map of England. Sorry. Okay.
There's like places that have similar names, but he made it up. I can't remember. He does say it, like what part of the country it's in, but
He says it's
like
near
way outside
Southampton.
Yeah, it's way outside London.
I've spent some time in Southampton.
Were there ghosts?
You know, I'm not going to say there wasn't. England's a weird place, you know?
Yeah. Lockwood kind of explains to everybody that like this is the best move for us because, you know, the Winkmans are dangerous. They're looking for us. It'd be a great time to let the heat die down by getting out of town. The whole case is really interesting. And George is like, so it has nothing to do with the Rotwell Institute, right? And he's like, oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, which like I remember thinking at the beginning of this, I hate when Lockwood does this, you know, when he has a plan, but he doesn't tell them the plan. But then George immediately calls him out on it. So I was like, oh, great.
Right. Yeah. This does seem to be a little bit outside of his, like, the plan is getting Lucy back kind of thing, where it feels like he is unconsciously kind of putting the pieces together. Everything that he said is true. And it would be good for Lucy to stick with them in terms of her safety.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like he is also, I don't think Lockwood has put the mystery together, but I think that he's trusting his instincts here to be like, this is the next move that's best for us.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that he's thinking the skull is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
But
it could lead to it.
It could lead to it. And also, like, he knows that the Rotwell Institute is obviously very involved, so may as well investigate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
anyways,
so they go up.
Yeah. So, well, the day before they go up, they're getting supplies, and Lockwood disappears for the day to do some stuff. And one of the things that it turns out he was doing was inviting Kipps to come along.
Crazy.
And yeah, so we learned that the job with Lockwood & Co. was why Kipps quit. Because even though he's done a lot of jobs as an adult supervisor, this was the one where he realized that actually I'm useless.
Oh.
And all I can do is stand there and like watch you work and presumably then eventually watch them die, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
He doesn't say that, but that's sort of the fate of a supervisor. And so he quit, and now he's like, and I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why. I don't know how Lockwood convinced me to come along, because it's just going to be more of the same. But it is worth it to note that the goggles from book 1 were mentioned in the previous chapter, so they're back in our mind again.
Right. But it's also like he feels, so this establishes he feels so sorry for himself. But he's also has made this like really bold existential choice, I think.
Yes.
That, you know, like it would be easier to stay in the institution and allow it to move you into the supervisor role, which is, I mean, as like useless as it makes him feel, it's far more safe than the work that he's done up till this point. And then, you know, like he could take up drinking and you know, watch children die.
Yeah, become Lucy's old supervisor, whose name escapes me.
Yeah.
I think I was referring that he's always been a supervisor in these books. He was like a team lead. But either way, he had lost his abilities through these books. So
yeah.
From like before these books started. So, but yeah, I guess it is even worse as a supervisor, because then you just like wait outside the building and give them instructions that might put them in danger. Like have these kids trusting you.
And then, just watch the outcome helplessly. It's a strong choice for him, but I don't know. It also seems motivated by a certain despair that like, well, I can't do this anymore, but I'm also useless now. Like, so like That's not a great place to be. So I'm glad that Lockwood went and picked him up.
Yeah, it feels very much like when a soldier who very much believes in the war that they're fighting is injured and is then like relegated to a desk job.
That's exactly right, I think. That's exactly right.
And yeah, and it feels like they've lost their meaning.
And so then when you're in that kind of position, when you have George come up to you and say, hardly recognized you there, Kipps, without your swanky jacket and sword. I thought if you took them off, you'd fall apart into separate wriggling pieces. That feels really good.
Way to just put his insecurities out. You know, I'm sure he felt the same, that if he took off the Fitz uniform, he would stop being himself.
He'd literally fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, George.
Well done, George. I love it. Yeah, but they get on the train and, you know, watch the scenery as they get down to Alderbury. And then as they pull in, they see like a big bonfire and they make these, they're like, oh, they've been setting fire to something. And Kipps is immediately like, or someone. And I'm like, him and George are going to get along fantastically.
They actually do like strike up a friendship here that lasts for the rest of the series.
Yeah. And Holly says, yuck, obviously. And then George is like, well, I don't see any charred legs sticking out of it. More likely to be objects that could be sources.
Yeah, so they're just panic burning. Yeah.
I love these two. And also, I guess it bears mentioning, I know Skull's not there, but the Alive team is all together now.
Yeah. We don't have Flo Bones here, but
that's true. Flo isn't like, I mean, she's part of the team, like definitely. Yeah, but she's not an employee.
Yeah. There is this wonderful thought that Lucy has. It's a little bit on the nose, but I think it's the right choice for like this kind of middle grade series. When she's watching Kipps and his despair and how he's wrestling with all of this, she thinks to herself, was I truly like Kipps, rudderless and cast adrift from purposes of my own? Because he accuses her of like, you're not making your own choices either. You just fell right back in with Lockwood and Co. You're not steering your own ship. And so she's kind of reflecting on the way that like symbolically in the story, Kipps is a version of her, right? That he left the Fitz agency. He feels like despair motivated that choice, but also the truth inside of him that he can't do this kind of work anymore, that, you know, that they want him to do. He can't be part of the organization and be true to himself. But at the same time, he feels inadequate to do anything else. And that is a feeling that Lucy has been wrestling with, especially early in the book. So I like how Kipps is kind of a literary foil here, and how Lucy is perceptive enough to like interrogate that at this point in the story.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because it's like he's changed from being Lockwood's foil to being Lucy's foil.
Yeah. Which is good for him because it dovetails into his redemption or like revitalization, you know.
Yeah.
I think both of their way of finding their way is like connected in this story, and from this point in the book onward, they both find their way back into the group.
So they get off the train and immediately George is like, I want to go see this grave sculpture that the kid was talking about. So they go to look at it, and it is just kind of like a normal, very religious carving on a grave about the end of days.
Yeah. The end of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, to me, that kind of ups the stakes somehow in a weird way. Like, the end of the world in Christianity is like, it's beyond human history. And like at that point in time, death is meaningless. Like people still die after Jesus's return in the Bible, but it doesn't mean anything because you like immediately just are like in the same place. You just don't have your living body anymore, which is like a really interesting idea of like, that is the kind of thing that the Orpheus Society is like interested in. And maybe the Rotwell people are interested in, like the control of death, the mastery of society and death. So I don't know, like it's just bringing all that stuff back around, but it's very ominous.
It also, in a much less sophisticated point, it reminds me of a scene in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I thought this too.
Yeah, near the end where Ray and, no, not going to come up with his name, are in a car and Ray quotes something from the Bible and he's like, do you think we've been so busy lately because the dead have been rising from their graves?
Right, yeah, yeah. And he's like, oh, I never thought of that. Yeah. Maybe it's the end of the world, yeah.
No, it's October. I should watch Ghostbusters. It's been a while.
But he's like, I don't think, he's like, this isn't a thing. George is like, this isn't a thing that's like a specific monster to this town. This is like a thing from the Bible. It's very general. It's like in a million places. This isn't, the dreaded creeping shadow. That's not a thing. So I think that this kind of gives us, there's like a soft denial of a religious cause and a supernatural explanation that foreshadows that the creeping shadow is like an entirely mundane thing, if that makes sense. It also
just is more of Stroud really doing a good job towing the line of having a book series about ghosts and the afterlife, but not bringing religion into it.
Yeah.
He does a really good job with that.
Because the thing has like, there's an angel on it and all this stuff. We'd never see angels. We'd never see demons. This just isn't the story that he's interested in.
Yeah, and he never really gets into, the characters having metaphysical discussions or existential discussions or anything like that. He's just like, there are ghosts, period.
Yeah. There's not even a sense of like, oh, and then there's this gateway has flames on the other side and this one has singing and harps. It's like nothing like that. It's just, there's just ghost.
Yeah, and I like that because it is welcoming to anybody who wants to read the books.
Yeah.
Always best not to say that one religion was correct and one was wrong.
Unless it's like the point of what you're, like his Dark Materials is like actively wrestling with that in a meaningful way. He's not interested in that.
Yeah. But I don't know. His Dark Materials, as much as it's a criticism on Catholicism, it is still kind of saying that Catholicism is the right one.
Well, if it's like, if all that stuff is real, then maybe it's real in this way. But
yes, exactly.
He doesn't care. Stroud doesn't care about that. He's like, what if ghosts? That's what he cares about.
Yes.
And he's like, the English still be English if what if ghosts? And then you're like, oh shit, you're right.
Amazing. I hope he had that exact thought. So then they head over to the inn where Danny is excitedly waiting for them outside. And then they're like, so you could show us to our rooms? And Danny's like, what? Don't you just work all night? You don't need to sleep.
Danny is the best.
And they're like, we would still need sleep. You promised us rooms. And he's like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. He's just so unbothered. I would be freaking out.
Kipps is like, is it just me or does that boy need punching? And Lockwood's like, it's not just you.
And then he comes back with 2 keys, but obviously there's 5 of them.
This is the classic.
Yes.
The classic, like, one bed. There's a hotel room, but there's one bed. And everybody looks at each other and is like, what do we do?
So there's one room with 2 twin beds, and then there's a room with a queen bed and a cot. And then the dude is like, somebody could sleep in the storage closet, but there's a ghost in there.
It's haunted.
Yeah. So you'd have to deal with the ghost first. And this is my favorite. I made mention of this a couple episodes ago. This is my favorite Lucy and Holly moment, where Lucy's like, well, we all did swift calculations. And then before she can say anything, Holly's like, Lucy? And Holly's like, yep. And they take the twin room and they're gone. And she's like, you guys can fight over who gets the cot. And
good luck.
And
good luck, boys.
Then the 2 of them go up to their room and they're like, and Holly says, I'm glad it's worked out this way, that we're sharing a room and that you're here with us on this trip and you're back with us. And Lucy kind of puts to rest any doubts that Holly might have had that Lucy did not leave the agency because of Holly.
Yeah, they actually have a conversation about like, I'm sorry that I'm the reason you left. And she's like, that is not it. Like,
I am so lying frustrated. To you all, but not about that.
Yeah.
It was not you. And then they have a moment where they almost, or maybe Lucy almost gets mad again. And Holly's like, wait, I can see this is upsetting you. I'm just saying this.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And
she's like, I know what you're saying. And thank you for saying it. So like, it's a really good, like, it does feel like they've had it out and they're genuinely okay with each other and that they really understand what happened, even if they don't understand like every detail.
Yes. And I love that this coming together of the two of them was brought about because you boys. There's nothing that brings women together, which I talked about in book 3 about how, like, I don't care how much they hated each other, they would have camaraderie. And that is shown here.
That's funny. I guess to be fair to this guy, he didn't know that Danny Skinner didn't know that Kipps was coming. So, I mean, he might have planned for 4 people. There was 4 beds. So
the way that he was like, oh, you want rooms? Even though he promised them rooms. Yeah. I don't believe that at all.
I don't think he was thinking about it. Yeah.
I don't think this kid understands other people.
Yeah. And then they get all their stuff put away, whatever. And then, there's a funny thing where she's like, I really hope you get your skull back.
Oh, yeah. When she describes how it told her to murder Holly.
Yeah, with a coat hanger. And then
Holly's like, I'll take the one by the door.
By the door. I just want a clear path to the exit, please.
Yeah, it's good.
So a lot of good humor through this whole section that's all situated in character. Again, that's the best humor. It's always the best humor over jokes.
And then we go back, the groups come back together, and there's that good moment of Lucy looking at Lockwood and being like, I take it you took the cot. And he's like, leader's prerogative.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kipps is upset that he has to wake up next to Covens.
I didn't sign up for this. What am I doing with my life? What has happened?
Yeah. I was a big shot at Fitz, and now I'm sharing a bed with George Covens. So then we learn that this is an all boys inn, usually. So it's Danny, his dad, and his grandpa. Mm-hmm. And the grandpa is interesting because he was an adult before the problem. So he's never seen a ghost and doesn't believe in them.
At all. Yeah. He was also the town vicar, which kind of brings back this notion of like religion, which I think his denialism is a part of that. So it's not just his age, but also like he was raised to be certain about things and to not change. Like those are important ideas for his generation. But yeah, he's like, they're making it up. The old man shouted, it's nothing but the wind, trees knocking on the window, too much cheese at night, claptrap and bologna. And then he sips some more beer. So I kind of love this guy. Like,
honestly, I had a very cheesy mac and cheese for dinner last night, and I had some weird dreams. So maybe his theory is correct.
That's right. If you eat too much cheese, then the moon, which is also made of cheese, has too great of an influence over you and will cause you, I don't know. But yeah, it's just like, so this guy's great. He's crazy. He's in a haunted house and doesn't believe that he's in a haunted house. He's in a very haunted town where people are dropping dead at a rate of like another person died in the time that they did not take this case. So it's like 16, 17, 18 people are dead now. Yeah. And he's like, not real. It's the wind. Amazing.
Yeah. So talking to Danny's dad, we get like confirmation basically on everything Danny said, which is great because he seems a little not untrustworthy, but like he would exaggerate everything.
Yeah. Well, then he's also lying to them at different points and hiding facts. So it's good to get everything in the open. But
the dad does confirm, more ghosts than people and how you can like see them all and how like when he was a kid, you could see them in the mist and stuff. And, it was a big dare to go into the woods, but they were calm, they weren't like attacking. But now it's just like ghost, 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 ghost.
And they're not even keeping up with the maintenance of the town anymore. And
Yeah.
they're just like hiding in their houses.
And then at one point, somebody's describing a ghost, and George gets really freaked out about it. He's like, long, lank, black hair. I can't bear hairy ghosts or ones with tattoos. And honestly, I get the hair thing. That has like the Ring Girl kind of vibes, right?
Yeah.
But the tattoos?
It's weird. I like Holly is like, George, is what? Shush. Just be quiet. Stop it. I don't know. I love that joke. That makes me laugh every time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the tattoo thing. That's a weird, funny detail.
I'm sure it's just supposed to be weird.
Yeah.
And then the dad says he said my favorite line here. You'll want food, will you, while you're alive?
While you're alive.
Not while you're here. So good.
And then he's like, a tripe and turnip stew for dinner, which sounds awful. That's just really terrible. And
No.
Lockwood is like, oh, sounds great. Is there anything else? And he's like, just stew. And Lockwood's like, we really need to solve the problems in this town as quickly as possible.
You know, I like turnip. When cooked well, turnip is delicious. But I actually don't really know what tripe is.
It's just there's not much meat on that bone fish. So this sounds like the poorest of poor people food to me. And I don't trust these guys to make a tasty dish, out of those ingredients at all.
The first or second stomach of a cow.
Oh, a tripe?
Yeah.
I thought a tripe was a fish.
That's a trout.
No. I know what a trout is. Wow, that's even worse then.
I would prefer just the turnip.
Yeah. I guess turnip can be okay. A turnip stew sounds
The pictures that come
terrible.
up are disgusting.
Yeah. It's the worst of poor English food. Like English food already a little scary. And this
love English food.
This sounds bad.
Give me meat and potatoes any day.
No.
Look, I am incredibly white, so in both color and food taste, I guess.
Yep. Here's toast, eggs, and beans all over it. Like, what happened? Stop it.
All right. I'm not a fan of the beans. The beans on toast thing. That one, it is strange to me. I've never gotten onto that. But meat pies?
Here's pudding, but it's bread. We tricked you. Stuff like that. Let's just stop.
Anyways, if it wasn't clear to everybody, that's the end of what we're talking about this week.
This is the end. Yeah. So they're determined to solve this as quickly as possible because
nobody wants to eat the second stomach of a cow.
Sleeping arrangements and food is bad. We got to solve these problems. Lots of jokes this time, so there's a lot to choose from.
Oh, no, mine is oh shoot, I just closed my book because I was like, and we're done.
Mine is one we didn't talk about. George does not let up off of Kipps when he's like, the whole thing of like, I thought if you took off your uniform, you fall apart. And then they get on the train and Kipps is like very vulnerable and like, my whole life has fallen apart and everything is bad. And I just would rather do something else than this business. And George is like, what? Like an art critic or train buff?
Yeah.
Or, with that turtleneck, you could do almost anything. So it's just like not letting up off of Kipps in the middle of his crisis. It's good. It's really good stuff to be like, you're my big brother now, and you're going to hate every second of it.
That is exactly what it is. Yeah. I do like George's, well, I don't see any charred legs sticking out of it. Because, oh my God. But no, it's the Kipps and Lockwood. Is it just me or does that boy need punching?
Yeah.
It's not just you.
Poor Danny. He's just trying to save his town.
Like in the worst way possible.
Like, I don't understand why you bunch of cowards won't just come up here and deal with our situation. I thought you were real kids.
Punk rock has got to be Kipps quitting Fitz to become an art critic. Right?
I'm going to follow my dream. You can't hold me back.
Yeah.
I will wear these turtlenecks. You never let me before.
Now, look, I love a turtleneck. I am not If you want to wear your turtleneck, wear your turtleneck. They are comfy. They are cozy. They are nice. But when you're a tall, like, lanky dude, it does give a vibe. It does give a vibe.
It's funny, when I read that about the turtleneck, I suddenly, like, thought back to all of Lavender Ghost Co. has, like, amazing fan art that she puts up, like, every single day. I don't know how she does that, of, like, these water painting sketches that she does. And she always does Kipps in a turtleneck, and I never really, like, understood why. And then I was like, oh, of course, like, it's this.
His art critic dreams.
Yeah. I was like, of course he's in a turtleneck. So, like, I love that. Yeah, I just immediately pictured him from all of her art. So that's really funny that he quit to be like, I'm going to review books and movies from now on. It's good.
Do some beat poetry.
Join a ska band. I'm going to.
Oh, Lord. No, we've gone too far. I'm sorry. That is not welcome on this podcast. I knew ska boys, you know? Never again. Never again.
Some people lived through the 90s. Can't go back.
Oh, thank God. If you want to reach out and tell us about your favorite turtleneck, you can do so on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast. Or you can follow me on Instagram at InferiorKateReads.
Send your emails about turtlenecks to contact@hologrammedia.com or go to the homepage at hologrammedia.com and scroll to the bottom and fill out the form.
And remember, I was going to make a So I Married an Axe Murderer joke, but I don't think anybody has seen that movie.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of, like, turtleneck poetry going on there.
Poetry,
so,
yeah.
So just remember to always wear your turtleneck when doing poetry.
Work.